Welcome to the Productivity Podcast. Today I'm joined by Bob Neville, who's a strategic global leader driving growth and innovation and transforming retail landscapes with visionary leadership and agile strategies. 30 plus years experience in retail. Hi, Bob.
Hey Simon, how you going? You make me sound like a bit of an old man there.
No, I was just, when I read that, I was thinking on our website it says 30 plus, 50 plus years experience, which is combined clearly. But experience is a good thing. Don't underplay it. Don't underplay it.
Good to be here.
Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate you taking the time out. Before we get into kind of talking about operational efficiency, customer service, that kind of stuff, do you want to give us a bit of career background, Bob, and what you've been up to recently?
Yeah, sure. So I got into retail in the broadest sense through product design. Really interested, when you see a product you've really put your heart and soul into on the shop floor and people just walking by. I got really interested in human behavior. How do you get people to stop? How do you get people to interact? How do you get people to do something? And obviously, how do you get people to buy something and engage with you? So that was sort of my journey. I've always loved sport, so I was really lucky to be part of the early days of Adidas in Asia Pacific in the 90s. And from then on, I've gone through with Adidas, New Balance, Under Armour, and more recently Clark's. But really always within that space of brand environment, retail selling, DTC, that sort of broader space, but both operationally and from a brand perspective, depending on what we see and find when we're working through a business, and depending on where on the world that we're actually working. So top line, that's what I've been up to. It's getting human beings to do something, and it's getting human beings to engage and want to be part of who we are and who that brand is, whoever that may be.
Yeah, some amazing brands there. It must be really cool feeling then if you're, I suppose, in the early days designing and then seeing that come to fruition, as you say, on the shelf, and then actually seeing people buy into that, understand the design, and then physically purchase it.
Yeah, I think it gets really interesting because it's really cause and effect. What sort of things have you got to do where through your process, your ways of working, environment design. It's not one magic bullet. Great retail is really a coming together of your whole organization. But it is really interesting, because you can definitely see that there's certain buttons, figuratively, that you can press that have a real uptick in whether it's consumer engagement, purchase. Intent of purchase, all sorts of things. So I think that gets really rewarding. And technology, you and I have had conversations around tech. I mean, now tech can be used in a number of different ways in terms of helping understand what's going on within your physical space or your digital space. And I think that's something, again, you can derive a lot of value from that tech. And it's not about tech for tech's sake, which I think can be a mistake. But the more data you have and the more data you use to drive your decision making, I think that's a really sound way to work. But again, making sure that it's also nuanced. It can't be sort of almost like data to paralysis. You can't just purely look at the numbers. It's there to help inform your decision making. But yeah, that cause and effect, I think, is always really interesting. Can be frustrating at times, but also really quite exciting when you get the right buttons pressed at the right time.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to kind of touch on operational efficiency because we know it's a hot topic. It's something we live and breathe every day in Rethink. In those environments which, well, I suppose every retail environment is classed as customer facing, but some increasingly more self-serve now than others. In those ones where there's a reliance on the colleagues to be part of the journey because they've got to go and fetch the stock or the stock's not accessible to pick and take, operational efficiency is really, really important in that. And kind of from your background and the things you're seeing at the moment, is that more because you need to free up the time to spend with customers, or because actually you've got more customers than kind of colleague ratio, so you need to get through customers quickly? Why is it so important in those more assisted sell or semi-assisted sell environments?
Well, I think there's a number of factors to that. One, we've always got to make sure we have the consumer at the center of everything we do. And whilst appreciating, that staffing ratios and levels can vary depending on the category and type of retail, that obviously varies. But when it comes to sort of footwear and apparel to a point, but if we talk about footwear, there's obviously a need there where somebody's come into your environment, into your store, and is wanting to try shoes on, and they need advice, they need help. Does this fit correctly? Do you have there's going to be questions. So I think the big challenge there comes in terms of making sure you've got staff and associates on the floor when needed, but not there when they're not needed. And I think that's all about the scheduling and making sure that you've fine-tuned that, because when you've got a multi-store fleet, those numbers can really stack up, and they really need to be under control. And that's the difference between making money and losing money. So at the same time, you don't want to frustrate the customers by having people standing there holding boxes or looking at shoes on the wall and going, well, who can serve me? Who's here to help me? And I think that's equally important, because you could lose sales that way by having too few staff. And you can lose revenue and profitability by having too many staff when they're not actually needed. So it's a bit of a juggling act, but that's the nature of retailing. It's continually understanding what's going on in your stores. It's continually listening to your floor staff, your store management. This isn't something that can just be a missive from head office. It has to be a two-way street, working as a team to actually understand the right sort of staffing ratios.
And that must be an even bigger challenge when you've got kind of fluctuating demand over the various seasons. And if we keep with the kind of footwear theme, you've then within season got events, haven't you? So you've got kind of back to school. So clearly at the end of the summer holidays, you've got big events, you've got Christmas, then you've got kind of sandals in the summer, and then you move out of that maybe into more boots and winter wear. So it's not as simple as flatlining that because we're busy in the summer, quieter in the winter, or vice versa. You've got peaks within peaks.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the thing that plays into that is that having people in your stores, staff wise, that actually understand your product, know how to fit shoes, have maybe gone through some specialist training within your organization. It's then very hard when you've got to make sure you don't lose that experience, you don't lose that cost of training through continual churn. So again, trying to get that balance between how do you uplift the numbers of people working in your stores during those busy periods, as you say, and keep that continuity in terms of regular work and income for your sales associates. So again, it's a juggling act, but the last thing again you want from a consumer's perspective is somebody coming in and just a member of staff standing there humming and hawing, not quite sure what they're talking about, maybe not really understanding how to fit some shoes. So again, it's a real juggling act. I mean, I'd like to think there was some sort of magic bullet, but there isn't. Just in the same way as going out to the back of house to get shoes for people to try on. I mean, there's all time associated with that, and that can be impacting productivity, the cost of serving that customer, and also from the consumer's perspective, the customer's perspective is making sure that they're feeling that they are being attended to and they're not just sort of sitting there wasting time.
Yeah, it feels there's always that kind of magic moment when you try and shoes on, if somebody goes off to get the size that you want to try on or the designs you want to try on, and there's that anticipation of, are they actually going to come back with your sizes, or are they going to come back with some alternatives because they've not got your sizes? So that feels like a bit of kind of shoe jeopardy.
I think I was just going to say something. I think there's a part that comes into this as well as SKU productivity, and actually knowing what actually sells within a store in a particular geography, and also what you need to introduce into a particular store to show customers the latest things. The last thing that you should have is just this wallpaper of products that just sort of just makes it hard for everybody. It makes it hard for the consumer. It makes it hard for the shop staff, and it just introduces a level of complexity and cost that really is going to undermine your business. So SKU productivity, amongst other metrics, I think is really important to ensure that what you're doing in store is as efficient and as focused as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we cast our mind back, I don't know, maybe even pre-pandemic, probably there was this whole view that we'd live in this gig economy and people would have 3 or 4 jobs and they'd, wouldn't necessarily be loyal to one employer over the other and they go where the hours were. I don't really think that's played through. Maybe COVID got in the way and other things and rising costs, but in an environment where you need those specialist skills of being able to fit shoes correctly, being able to understand that, especially then dealing with kind of children as well, and babies even that probably don't want to conform to putting their foot in a machine or on a machine because they don't know what's happening. Having staff, colleagues that have a good level of tenure that you can retain must be really, really important, rather than some of the figures we see now in retail in general where people are in 60, 70. I think the hotels are in kind of plus 100% labour turnover.
Yeah, again, it's getting that balance. I mean, and where you tap into that labour. There's many of the brands I've worked with through peak periods. There are regular temp staff that like that sort of holiday type work. So there are ways around it, but again, whether you're putting on, you're running a marathon and you've running or sponsoring, a marathon, and you're running an expo, where you suddenly need this massive uptick of staff to be able to deal with what you're going to get over that marathon weekend or week. So having the ability to get that regular access to that sort of temp pool of people that then provides them with continuity of work, and then provides the brand and the company with continuity of experience is really, really important.
Yeah, and I think again there's tech which is starting to enable some of those call outs. If the big catering companies need it for events and all that kind of stuff, there's tech out there that helps enable that.
Yeah.
So in terms of metrics, some of the stuff we always get asked around is, what metrics do people use to manage productivity? What things have you used in previous lives to help manage productivity in terms of metrics?
I've always broke them down into four buckets, and I think these would be applicable no matter the category. But I'd break it down into financials, store development, traditional retail KPIs, let's say, and then merchandising and VM. And by doing that, you're capturing the key data in each one of those 4 areas. So, financials, revenue, gross margin, contributing margin percentage, labor versus sales, that type of thing. Store development, size of stores, productivity per square foot or meter, stock room as a percentage, capex per square foot or square meter. And then when it comes to traditional retail KPIs, obviously units per transaction, conversion, average transaction value, and the like. And then merchandising and VM, weeks of cover, range assortment, SKUs, how many SKUs do you have? So by looking at things in those 4 broad buckets, but in each instance having like 6 to 7 metrics, I think is incredibly important in having a view on that process and operational efficiency part of your retail business.
Yeah, so getting that balanced overall view. Yeah. Sounds like a sensible approach. Seen variations on the themes of that, but that rounded approach. So you've taken into view of kind of the productivity metrics, the physical attributes, the stock attributes, the customer attributes, and colleague attributes. That rounded approach, tends to win through.
Yeah, they all sit within there, but I think there's a need for data, and then there's a need for people in the right professionals in your organization to look and understand that data and really understand what's happening. Why has a number dropped? Why should we reduce a number to a certain percentage? That understanding and application of data is incredibly important as well, because data is really important, but it's part of the story.
Yeah, and at a local level, it needs to be actionable, doesn't it? So, as a local store leader,
Yeah,
what are those indicators telling me? But actually, what can I do about it, or how can I influence it to make it better, or to
yeah.
manage those numbers? Otherwise, it's just a nice bunch of maybe red, green, amber numbers on a wall that I don't feel I can influence, so therefore I'm not involved in the journey.
Yeah, and I think that you touched on a really important point there, Simon. I think what's really important with this is making sure that, yeah, the information, the data that you're gathering and spending, you know, money on, whether it's through tech or systems, is enabling people at a store level to really see what's happening within their store, so they can actually then influence it. And I think it's also really important that when these core KPIs and metrics are pulled together, that's done in a way where you're working and understanding that there's different views and perspectives that are needed to get a rounded view. As a somebody standing or sitting there in HQ, it's very easy to turn around and throw a percentage out there. But when you get to a store level, and even in a particular geography, there's going to be an interpretation or an impact of that decision. And it's really, really important to make sure that there's, again, that sort of 360 team view on the strategies and the KPIs and things that will ladder up to delivering against those strategies. So again, great communication, clear communication of what your business plans are, what your your marketing is. Communication has to be the key. You all have to be on the same page, marching to the same tune, but understanding from a leadership perspective that there needs to be nuance, and that could be geographically at a national level, at a regional level, but there has to be nuancing there for sure.
Yeah, no, I agree. That alignment from senior leadership down to kind of the part-time colleague, and again, tech's really helped enable that with comms platforms and being able to reach kind of the frontline workers that maybe before would have relied on a briefing from the manager, etc. Tech's really, really, really starting to push that forward, which is great to see. So, final question from me then, Bob, one that everybody gets. What's the best bit of business advice you've ever been given? It's a tricky one, so if you need a second to think, that's fine.
I would say very very early on in my career, I won't mention the company names, but very early on in my career, we were looking to establish a global brand throughout Asia Pacific, and the budgets that we had were pretty minuscule compared to some of the competition, and I can remember then having a conversation with one of the main board directors and just describing how we were continually getting beaten up by the competitors, being outspent, and they turned around to me and just sort of said, "It's not what you've got; it's what you do with what you've got." And he talked about actually more of an entrepreneurial mindset, and maybe a bit politically incorrect, but almost undertaking guerrilla warfare. And by that, he was really meaning being very prudent with the resources you have, but using those resources in a way that are both unexpected and surprising, and that causes issues for your competition, and provides a lot of value for your customers. So for me, that sort of advice, I mean, it wasn't what I wanted to hear at the time, because I sort of left with no additional budget, but it sat with me from then on in terms of agility of thought, an entrepreneurial mindset, being unexpected, and like I say, sort of politically incorrect, but undertake guerrilla warfare. Don't be predictable. Don't just use the same playbook. Don't do the same things year in, year out. Use data to inform your decisions, but look at what you're doing, and evolution and is a really important part of business, growing and continually moving. But what's more important is revolution and understanding when is the right time for revolution, because revolution is expensive. But there is a need at times for revolution. But one thing for sure, don't stand still. Don't think because you've got a market leading position, you're going to be in that spot forever and a day. That's not what's going to happen. So I would say maybe a bit of a long answer to your question, but I'd say that bit of advice going back now probably 25, 30 years has really stood me in good stead. And it's the way I approach whatever I do with whoever I work for. It's really, really important. Agile mindset, entrepreneurial mindset, act fast, learn from your mistakes quickly, and just keep moving forward, and maintain a leadership position through that sort of continual change mindset.
Amazing. Very, very wise words. Love that one. Thanks, Bob. And if people want to reach out to you, Bob, and have a conversation, find out a bit more, explore opportunities with you, where's the best place for them to do that?
They can contact me via LinkedIn. Look for Bob Neville on LinkedIn. Or I'm sure with this, there'll be some details as well that you can put in the links for people to connect through with me. But I'm happy to have conversations. I love conversations around the sort of things that are happening, the sort of things that are possible. I'd love to have conversations with your listeners.
Brilliant. We'll put the link to your LinkedIn profile in the show notes so people can click through and get in touch.
Fantastic.
So just leaves me to say thanks for your time, Bob. Really appreciate the conversation, and we'll catch up soon.
Awesome, Simon. Really great conversations. Chat again very soon. Thanks very much. Have a great day.